Hello and welcome to the Verity channel, where our aim is to introduce you to amazing humans who have achieved uncommon results, and to do so in a way that makes perfect sense to all of us, so that we can also emulate those steps in our own careers and also in our own lives. Now, today's interview is actually filmed in front of 150 of Brisbane's finest company owners and executives. And during the interview, we feature our very own Brisbane Lord Mayor, Adrian Schrinner. Adrian has been with the Brisbane City Council for over 16 years, and during that time has held a staggering 11 different positions. This also included being elected as Brisbane's youngest deputy mayor at the age of 33, before being elected to Brisbane's Lord Mayor position in 2019, where today he looks after over 1.25 million Brisbane residents. Today's interview is done in 3 parts. During the first, we will talk about previous, current and future projects, and we'll even share with you Adrian's most favourite initiative during his time as Lord Mayor. The second interview will then go into the 2032 Olympics, and we'll talk a bit more in detail about what to expect over the coming weeks, months and years. History will also say that Adrian was the Lord Mayor when Brisbane was awarded the 2032 Olympics, another historical moment for both us and for him in his career. And then finally, we'll talk about the e-mobility strategy that was released from the Lord Mayor's office, which is not only the first of its kind in Australia, but also in the world. So thank you for watching the video, and if you do find value out of it, remember to like and share the content with others also. So without further ado, here's the interview with our very own Brisbane Lord Mayor, Adrian Schrinner. Again, going back to the whole infrastructure piece, transport, congestion and so on and so forth is something that has to be on the horizon. It's funny, I lived in the Gold Coast for 7 years before we moved to Brisbane, and I had to have seen the Gold Coast Highway, as you go through surface, probably change 7 or 8 times. Thank goodness you weren't the Lord Mayor back then for that region. So that was interesting. So we want to get it right the first time as well, because it is quite an expensive exercise. Now, talking about people moving from one place to the other, your e-mobility strategy that you released, I believe is the first of its kind in the world. I was lucky enough to meet the Active Transport Chair, Ryan Murphy, at the time. And some of you may not know this, so I'm a co-founder in an electric scooter business where we sell them. It's called iScoot, and it's in Newstead, and you feel free to go and have a look at it later on after today, depending on how many beers you've had. So it was actually one of the people in your team who actually lives close by. He kept on walking past iScoot, saw the name, and we actually, to the press, Channel 7, all the different channels were there, and we actually released it there, I was very proud of that, so thank you for that. I never had a chance to thank you for that before. So Brisbane wasn't first, though, when it came to e-mobility and electric scooters, yet your plan was the first of its kind in the world. How did that happen?
It was interesting, because I went to a number of events. It was probably around 3 or 4 years ago, where we're talking about transport trends and what's happening around the world. And people were saying, adults riding scooters is the next big trend. And I was like, rubbish, surely not. Like, who would do that? And it just kept coming up. And then you started to see what was happening in some of the US cities. So sort of, with Lime sort of kicked off. And then Lime came here. And I remember having the meeting. They came into the office and said, we want to bring e-scooters to Brisbane. And I said, yeah, look, we're open to that, but let's do a trial. But I said, the condition of the trial is that I get to ride the first scooter in Brisbane that comes, and that was arranged. The interesting thing was, I rode the scooter up and down out the front of the Supreme Court, because there was a nice big wide footpath there, just to try it out. And immediately that afternoon, there was a letter from the Department of Transport and Main Roads that came to Lime, and it said, these scooters are illegal and dangerous. You are not permitted to operate them here in Queensland. And so that was like, whoa, okay. A bit of quick contact with the Minister for Transport, and we were able to get that reversed. And so he also approved a trial, and then I guess the rest is history. So we had the trial, 2018, and then in terms of scooter ridership, Brisbane is up there in terms of some of the highest numbers in the world per capita. So Brisbane residents have jumped on these scooters. Now we've got the e-bikes that have become part of the scheme. And so we saw it not just as an opportunity for a new fun form of transport, but we're interested in how many of these scooter trips would replace car trips or other trips on the road. And the data that is coming out is that 20 to 30% of scooter trips are replacing car trips. And so it's not just, people aren't just doing it for fun, this is reducing traffic congestion as well. Now obviously there's some challenges around e-scooters. They can go quite fast. The public hire ones are regulated to a certain speed, but there are some e-scooters that can go 100 k's an hour. Are they the ones that you sell?
I used to be a co-director in electric scooters. No, they actually come in limited, and so. But some people think they're very smart, and you can actually, in some cases, clip wires and do whatever. So, but not ours.
So is that another business proposition for you? Is it? No. But yeah, they can go quite fast, and so obviously managing safety is a really important thing. So we've been working on an e-mobility strategy to try and make sure that these are integrated into our transport network in a way that is safe, but also does reduce congestion. So we were the first city in Australia to have an e-mobility strategy, and one of the first in the world. In the US, generally it wasn't part of any kind of strategy. It was just a business showed up and said, here's some e-scooters for hire, and in some parts of the US, anything goes. So there was no real policy regulation around it. So we've sort of led the world when it comes to regulating how they operate and make sure they're operating safely. We also found an interesting trend with accidents. So in the early period of e-scooters, there are a lot more accidents. But as people got used to the technology, it's becoming safer and safer. And the features on the scooters are becoming safer as well. So the braking features, speed limiting features, geo-tracking of the scooters. So yeah, it's been quite an interesting experiment, but one that, we're proud we've been leading Australia and leading the world in some extent. So we're the first city in Australia to allow the trial of e-scooters, and now they're, you go Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, they're, all over the place now. So.
Yeah. No, well said. I want to talk to you about it a bit more. Before I do, so Shane just mentioned that downstairs back on of Little Street, somebody has parked in front of the garage door. If you wouldn't mind, if it's somebody in the room, if you wouldn't mind just quickly going and moving your car, and we'll just wait until somebody moves so we can laugh and point at them. White Mitsubishi, is it? Thank you. White Mitsubishi, if you're driving that in the back, please move it. Shane can be very mean if he needs to be. I was going to say, the features, you're absolutely right. I was working with somebody and they had a really interesting idea about the fact that there's so much technology on these scooters, and one of the ideas that they had, which I'll give to you, is potentially, is you can ping a signal down and you can actually essentially map the maintenance requirements of pathways across the whole of Brisbane. He is saying sell to council, probably now give to council because it's your idea now, and you can actually map a whole grid. So there's so many additional benefits to the technology which we haven't even thought about yet because it is so new.
Well, that is great. We hadn't thought of the scooters, but we do actually have a couple of bikes in council where literally a contractor rides a bike along a footpath, and the bike will monitor bumps in the footpath for the same reason, basically. So it helps us with our maintenance program. That's something.
Obviously, it wasn't his idea. Then somebody else. It was already being done.
That's
anyway,
right.
Okay. No, fair enough. And you're right. From actually something else that I read as well in the research leading up to this is I think it said 1 in 5 rides ends up in a transaction. In other words, somebody getting off a scooter and actually buying something from a shop. So it's actually, again, the economic benefit's quite wide, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. It does boost business as well. People aren't just doing it, like I said, for recreation. They're also, getting a coffee, going shopping, using these things for various purposes. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So one last thing on that is, again, it's a new piece of technology. It's been adopted really well in Brisbane. We're kind of getting used to it these days. There's also still quite a bit of infrastructure development, I guess, that would have to be done around this. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
The main thing is identifying the most busy paths in the city when it comes to, might be walkways or paths, and then trying to get separation wherever possible between pedestrians and cyclists, as well as scooter users. And so you can see that along the Kingston Smith Drive Riverwalk, we've got separate sections, and some of the busiest sections of Riverwalk have separation between walkers and riders. And so that's basically what we're rolling out in various locations to make sure that there is separation so that pedestrians aren't getting knocked over by very fast scooter riders or cyclists. So that's the key, and it's just about which paths have the greatest number of users, we prioritise them.
Exactly, and it all takes time to figure that out, right? And especially as technology continues to grow. So, one last thing. Can you tell me what time it is?
Just after 20 past 1.
You sure? 20 past 1, you said? Or was it 20 past 2, potentially? Oh, hang on, that's in Sydney and Melbourne. You like that?
I see where you're going with this.
Somebody told me there's somebody trying to push daylight savings in Queensland. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Can we do a poll here? Who would support a trial of daylight saving in Queensland? I think that's like 95%. Oh, look, it's been a long time since we last had a trial. I remember it as a youngster. And the other thing that's happened is, if you think about the results of the trial, so 1992, I think it was held. They did a poll, they did a vote, and at the time, 60% of Southeast Queensland residents voted yes for daylight saving. Daylight saving, down the track, if you did another poll, I have no doubt it would win. I just have no doubt. The main reason for that is demographics and the fact that a lot of people have come from areas that do have daylight saving, so it's not a debate for them really. They've had it, they understand the benefits of it. I guess the key issue to resolve is, there are some parts of Queensland that already effectively have daylight saving just because of their geographic location. So some parts of the north and the west where they've really got the benefits of daylight saving already. So it's just about how we manage that issue without disenfranchising them. Is there daylight saving just for Southeast Queensland? Is it a whole of state thing? In the end, I think it'd be good to ask the community for their views. It's a little bit of a shame that the state government, both sides of politics, really don't want to ask this question. I think it's because they know what the answer would be. So
I couldn't agree with you. Couldn't agree more. So talking about statewide politics, should we talk about your future career and where that's heading? And maybe a prime minister at the end of that somewhere?
Definitely not. No.
We've already discussed Overlord. You're already there. But
look, I did. It was interesting in the elect that I represented before I became Lord Mayor. It was Chandler Ward. I had two predecessors in that ward that went to other levels of government. One was a guy called Michael Caltabiano, who ran for the state parliament, and then shortly after lost his seat. And then one before was a guy called Graham McDougall. He was a councillor and then became a federal member and then lost his seat after one term. So I've taken that to mean stay in local government. Look, it's just something I love. I must admit, my own personal view on the federation is that there should only be 2 levels of government rather than 3. And
should we do another poll on that quickly?
I think we probably have one too many levels of government, and it's a very vexed issue about which level should go. But look, I enjoy local government. I have no plans on going anywhere else. There's a lot to do here in Brisbane, and I want to stay here. So
yeah, I know, and I think we all appreciate that being local to Brisbane. Yes, we give them a round of applause for that. If you agree.
Thank you.
You're doing a lot of wonderful things around Brisbane. We're all very proud to call ourselves Brisbaneites. Thank you for making that happen, because at the end of the day, you stood at the top of that to make sure that does happen. So again, from the bottom of all of our hearts, we very much appreciate it, and thank you. We've run out of time to ask more questions. Are you happy to hang around for a little bit until about 2 o'clock-ish or so? So if you want to...
4 o'clock? It was that daylight saving time.
Are we talking... Yes. Feel free to come and have a chat with the Lord Mayor. You know the official and non-official or preferred version of what to call them when you have a conversation. We'll do some photos first, and then but feel free to have a conversation, continue to hang around with us today. It'd be much appreciated. With that, I'm going to hand you over to Mr. Doyle.
Thank you very much. Let's have another round of applause. That was awesome. Thanks very much, Andre. Thanks so much, Lord Mayor. Do you want to? Do the honours. We have a small gift to show our appreciation. Great speech. I loved it. Crowdfunding globally through to new bridges and great precincts and Howard Smith walls, etc. So, thanks very much.